Hi, my name is Jon Kelsen. I teach here at Drisha. In this week's Parsha, Parashat Ki Tisa, the Torah tells us of the building of the golden calf, of the Egel HaZahav. When the people are contributing the gold for the building thereof, in chapter 32 of Sefer Shemot, it says that Aaron takes the gold from them, Vayatzar oto b'cheret, Vayaseu egel masecha, and they fashioned it and they built into the calf, and they said, "This is your God," or "These are your gods, Elo Lehecha Yisrael, who took you out of Egypt." It's interesting, this language of Vayatzar oto b'cheret, perhaps building it in a mold. That's one way of understanding it. But it also appears that this is a reference back to the construction which took place in Egypt. What I mean is, and this is a very David Silber has pointed out, the book of Exodus is framed by buildings, by opening buildings and closing buildings. The opening buildings are the construction, the building that people do for Pharaoh in Egypt, building cities for Pharaoh at Pitom, Bet Ramses, and then closes with the construction of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the building for God. In other words, the book is built as a contrast between construction for Pharaoh, construction for God. Here, in another construction which takes place in the middle of the book, we see a subtle reference to construction to Pharaoh again, this time not in Egypt, but actually in Sinai. Vayatzar oto b'cheret. B'cheret reminds the reader of the Chartumim, of the magic, the magicians which we find earlier in the book in the description of Egypt. Here also, Vayatzar oto b'cheret, the Egel is built b'cheret. So it reminds the reader of that which the Egyptians do rather than the Israelites. I would also add Vayatzar oto b'cheret, even that Vayatzar reminds one of Egypt, Mitzrayim, Vayatzar, and thus we see that in the building of the Egel itself, there's a subtle reference or a borrowing of the language of Egypt into the narrative of the construction of the Egel. And this is made even more prominent later on in chapter 32. Moshe, when he comes down the mountain, he sees, Vayar Moshe Ta'am, in chapter 32, verse 25, he sees Ki Faruahu, Ki Fira'o Aharon, Lishim Saba Kamehem. Moshe sees that the people are Farua, perhaps wild, uncontrolled. Ki Fira'o Aharon. Now, in the unvocalized text, Ki Fira'o Aharon could actually be read Ki Paro Aharon. In other words, because Aaron is somehow associated now with Pharaoh. And it's the building of the Egel is a pharaonic-like activity which the Jewish people are engaged with. And thus we find that building for Pharaoh takes place not literally for the king of Egypt, and not literally in the land of Egypt, but can also happen in Sinai at the foot of the mountain, and in an attempt to worship Elo Lehecha Yisrael. All of this is therefore contrasted with the Mishkan. Thus what we see is that the book of Exodus not only begins with a construction for Pharaoh, but also continues with an attempted construction for God, or a failed construction for God, that is the Egel HaZahav, which itself is associated with the construction for Pharaoh, and ultimately both of those activities miss the bar. The true construction and true human creativity only reaches its pinnacle, and is only done properly with the continuation of the book, the construction of the Mishkan. Shabbat Shalom.